Before we begin, a quick reminder. This series blends history with dramatized moments inspired by the men who lived it. Together, they honor my father, his shipmates, and all who faced that night in the North Atlantic. Tonight's episode is different. It begins with a dedication, a foreword, and then a prelude to war. These are the foundation of that story you're about to hear. To the men of the USS Schenck and USS Leary who carried the weight of that cold December night their entire life, who sailed into the storm together, and who never forgot each other. This story is for them, for their courage, their friendship, and their unwavering code of honor, even towards those they were sent to fight. Fair winds and following seas, my friends. And especially to my father, Chief Radio Technician Elmer Robbie Robinson, USNR, whose stories once told in person now live on. Your voice still echoes in the static, dit 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 da. Some stories never make the history books, nor are they taught in the classroom. They live in the haunted corners of memory, in the trembling of an old man's voice when he talks about Christmas Eve, 1943. They surface in dreams, and the silence between two shipmates, in the way a man stares too long at the ocean and says nothing at all. This story came to me in pieces, reluctantly and over time. My father served aboard the USS Schenck, a battered destroyer from another war called back into service when the world caught fire again. He was a radioman that night the Leary was lost, the night the storm raged, the night the U-boats came. As a child, I didn't understand why his hand sometimes shook when he held a coffee cup, or why his voice sometimes cracked when he told this story, or why he stayed awake on December 23rd as it turned into December 24th. Later, I learned why. That night, he heard the voice of a dying man over the radio, a German submariner gasping out in an appeal to God, knowing he would never see the daylight or those he loved again. My father listened. He heard the message. It was in German, but its meaning was crystal clear. And then the sea claimed the U-boat and the voice. He never spoke of fear, but I knew it was there. Once Leary was hit, I know he wondered if Schenck would be next. I know he wondered if a torpedo was already racing towards them beneath the Black Sea. There were no other ships nearby. Leary was down. No one to save them if the worst came. He spoke of scanning the debris field for signs of life, and for the dead, of helping identify bodies of the Leary's crew, men who had been in a bar drinking with him just days earlier, of giving survivors the clothes off his back and the blankets from his bunk, of trying to give comfort to those severely wounded. He spoke of reunions decades later, of the laughter, the tears, and the unshakable bond between men who had faced death together. He spoke of his wish to be buried in the North Atlantic, home to those he could never forget, eternally with his shipmates in an unmarked grave. My father carried those moments every day of his life, and when he passed, we honored his wish. He rests now in the same ocean that nearly claimed him that night with shipmates of wars past. This story is for him, for the 98 souls lost with Leary, for the ones who came home but were never quite the same, and for the voices on the radio that never got an answer. Because if we don't tell these stories, who will? They will be lost to time. They certainly don't teach this in schools anymore. Now let's move to December 1943, the North Atlantic. On December 17th, the small but determined U.S. Navy task group slipped out of Casablanca Harbor. Their assignment, escort convoy GUS 24, a massive eastbound formation carrying men, materiel, and the lifeblood of the war. The task group included 4 destroyers, USS Babbitt, USS Decatur, USS Leary, and USS Schenck, all under the command of Rear Admiral Arnold J. Isbell aboard the escort carrier USS Card. But hours after departure, new orders crackled across the radio. Break off from Convoy Gus 24, hunt and engage Wolfpack Borkum. At that time, 13 German U-boats. Then came the storm. A North Atlantic gale swept across their path. Seas towering, wind shrieking, visibility collapsing into sleet and darkness. USS Babbitt broke down, forced to limp back to port. USS Decatur's steering flooded, her crew lashing ropes to the rudder just to keep her moving. In a previous episode, I mistakenly referenced the Babbitt with steering casualty. The Card pressed ahead, her aircraft grounded by the storm. Leary and Schenck were on their own. Between them and safety lie Wolfpack Borkum. By December 23rd, Card was struggling alongside with Decatur. 7 miles north, Leary and Schenck maintained a fragile screen. At that very hour, Admiral Carl Donitz gave his order to Borkum, attack, sink the carrier. At 2100 hours, Card's radar lit up like a blizzard. Too many blips to track. Too many submarines to stop. The darkness and the storm still grounded her aircraft. The situation was desperate. The order went out. Leary and Schenck were to intercept the enemy. Alone in the dark, Schenck made radar contact with U-305. Guns flashed. Depth charges thundered. But more echoes appeared. The Wolfpack was closing in from all sides. She was in a deadly ambush. USS Leary turned to assist. 2 destroyers against the now 13 U-boats. It was a suicide mission. They fought anyway. By dawn, Card hoped to launch aircraft and turn the tide. But for Leary and Schenck, the war had already come. The desperate battle for life was on. And before the sun rose on Christmas Eve, USS Leary would be gone, along with 98 of her crew. This is their story of skill at sea, of courage in the face of the impossible odds, of survival amid destruction, and above all, of the American spirit. In the next episode, Schenck sinks U-45 as Leary falls prey to a deadly ambush. Please like and subscribe. Get notified of the next episode in this series. Until then, never forget the heroes among us. God bless. Stay safe. Dit, 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 da. If you know, you know. Out.